Okay, let's unpack this because our mission for today's deep dive is to basically look under the hood of the modern attention economy. And we are pulling from a pretty wild stack of sources
Oh,
today.
yeah. It's quite the mix.
Right. Like we've got academic research on neurobiology, some really dense technical blogs on Netflix's back-end engineering, and then the frame theory documentary script.
Hmm.
And then out of nowhere, this deeply fascinating report on the breakfast cereal industry, which we will definitely get to.
Yeah, that one it's a surprising connection, but it makes so much sense.
It really does. But the goal here is to uncover the hidden, meticulously engineered mechanics of how both digital and physical environments are designed to just completely bypass our rational decision making.
Right. It's all about bypassing the logical brain.
Exactly. And to wrap our heads around how this actually works in practice, I want you to imagine walking into a massive, sprawling bookstore. The shelves are packed with thousands of titles, but this isn't a static environment. It's like a digital chameleon.
Oh, I like that analogy.
Yeah, so as you walk down the aisles, the physical book covers are morphing. They're changing colors, swapping out photos, altering their typography, and it's all based on the receipts tucked inside your pocket.
Wow.
So if you bought a romance novel last week, suddenly every thriller, comedy, and sci-fi book on the shelf has two people kissing on the cover.
Right. And the underlying engine driving that chameleon effect is this very specific, incredibly ruthless ticking clock. Like, the architecture of this entire system is built around a severe time constraint.
Which is just wild to think about.
It is. Netflix, for example, operates on this foundational engineering belief that they have exactly a 90-second window,
90 seconds.
a minute and a half. That is the entire lifespan of a user's patience. If they do not capture your attention and convince you to press play within that 90-second window, you're gone. You abandon the platform and take your attention somewhere else.
I mean, 90 seconds to scan a library of thousands of options before the cognitive load just becomes too much and we close the app. That pressure cooker really explains why they can't just rely on, good content or traditional marketing. They have to engineer an immediate subconscious reaction.
Yeah, and to win that 90-second war, the engineering teams deploy something called aesthetic visual analysis, or AVA.
AVA, right?
And what's fascinating here is the sheer incomprehensible scale of this operation. Think about a single one-hour episode of a show like Money Heist.
Okay.
That one episode contains roughly 86,400 individual frames of video.
Wait, 86,000 frames in one episode?
Yeah, almost 90,000.
Yeah.
And AVA is this AI system that ingests every single one of those frames and categorizes them. And it isn't just taking random screenshots.
Right, it's way smarter than that.
Oh, vastly.
Yeah.
The algorithm is analyzing the rule of thirds. It's evaluating the lighting, measuring contrast and brightness. It's even tracking actor visibility and micro expressions.
It's almost creepy.
It is a little bit. It tags all of this metadata to mathematically isolate the absolute perfect, most psychologically compelling frames to use as a potential thumbnail.
And the craziest part is it isn't just doing this in some slow batch processing way overnight. Like the back-end blogs highlight that they're using a machine learning framework called contextual bandits,
Right.
which, in machine learning terms is essentially solving the multi-armed bandit problem.
Yeah, the classic explore or exploit dilemma.
Exactly. So the system has to constantly choose between exploring new options, like maybe throwing a weird random thumbnail at you to test your boundaries and gather new data, or exploiting what it already knows about you to guarantee a click.
And it does this on the fly.
Right. It's active, online learning that adjusts in real time based on your immediate context. And the infrastructure required for this means they are scaling the system to handle over 20 million personalized image requests per second.
It's hard to even picture that.
No.
20 million real-time calculations a second just to figure out which visual wrapper will short-circuit your scrolling.
It's staggering.
It really is.
Yeah.
And the documentary script provided some incredible examples of how this personalized exploitation actually manifests on our screens. Like, take a classic film like Good Will Hunting.
Oh, yeah. This was a great example.
So if your historical data suggests you are a die-hard romance fan, the contextual bandit algorithm serves you a thumbnail of Matt Damon and Minnie Driver leaning in for a kiss.
Right.
The system exploits your known preference. But if your watch history is filled with stand-up specials and comedies, your thumbnail for the exact same movie is a shot of Robin Williams laughing.
And the Pulp Fiction example in the sources takes this to an even more extreme level.
Oh, for sure.
Like, if you recently watched a movie starring Uma Thurman, you get the iconic, classic movie poster of her smoking on the bed.
Which is what everyone thinks of.
Right. But if the algorithm flags you as a John Travolta fan, you get a completely different, almost unrecognizable cover featuring only him.
Just him.
Just him. It's a completely bespoke packaging designed to hit a specific demographic trigger, which honestly forces a pretty heavy philosophical question.
I know where you're going with this.
Like, if I am clicking on a romantic comedy rapper, and you are clicking on a dark, gritty action rapper, and we end up watching the same underlying movie, does the water cooler moment still exist?
It's a valid point.
Are we really sharing a cultural experience if we are both being manipulated into watching the exact same piece of media for completely different, highly tailored psychological reasons?
Yeah, this raises an important question about the fragmentation of shared reality. We call it the Goodwill Hunting illusion.
The Goodwill Hunting illusion,
Yeah.
like that.
You and I might show up at the office the next day and talk about the movie, assuming we participated in a collective cultural moment. But in reality, we approach the material from completely isolated, personalized feedback loops.
We were baited in totally different ways.
Exactly. The narrative remains static once we hit play, but the gateway we walked through to get there was entirely customized to our individual psychological triggers. We aren't really sharing a culture. We are sharing a platform that is mirroring our own biases back at us.
Wow. Okay, so the contextual bandits and the 20 million server requests get me to click within that 90-second window. The chameleon wrapper worked.
Right. You're in.
But that is only the acquisition phase. Once they get me in the door, the strategy shifts. Because, we've all experienced this phenomenon. You sit down on a Tuesday night intending to watch a single 45-minute episode, and suddenly the sun is coming up and you've consumed an entire season.
It happens to the best of us.
It really does. The
Yeah.
platform has to keep you from leaving.
And to understand those retention mechanics, we have to transition away from the digital packaging and look directly at neurobiology.
Okay.
Because the architecture of the binge didn't start with algorithms. If we trace the history, the foundation was actually laid in the 1990s with DVD box sets.
Oh, right. Buying a whole season at Blockbuster.
Exactly. That was the first time consumers could ingest multiple episodes of a narrative in one sitting without waiting a week for the network to broadcast the next installment.
Right, you had the control.
But when the streaming revolution took hold around 2007, and eventually when platforms started dropping entire seasons at once around 2013, the delivery mechanism perfectly aligned with a primal human cognitive flaw known as the Zeigarnik effect.
Yes, the Zeigarnik effect and the concept of unit bias.
Yep.
Because our brains are evolutionarily hardwired to seek completion. It is the exact same instinct that compels you to finish every last bite of food on your plate or, check off every single arbitrary box on a to-do list.
We hate things being unfinished.
We really do. When a task or a narrative is incomplete, it creates a literal mental itch. The brain registers incomplete information much more vividly than completed tasks. It keeps it active in our working memory.
Which is exhausting.
Right. So when a showrunner ends an episode on a massive cliffhanger, they are weaponizing that biological itch. They are hijacking our executive function, creating an unresolved tension that the brain desperately wants to close.
And the cliffhanger creates the biological demand, right? But the platform's infrastructure supplies the immediate frictionless resolution.
That's the key. Frictionless.
Because in the era of broadcast television, you simply had to suffer with that mental itch for 7 days.
You just had to wait.
Yeah, and your brain eventually cooled down. But streaming platforms introduced the autoplay feature.
Oh, autoplay.
Just as that mental itch reaches its absolute peak, right as the screen cuts to black, the platform swoops in and starts a 5-second countdown to the next episode.
5, 4, 3.
It offers the immediate relief of cognitive closure before your rational brain even has time to intervene.
It operates a lot like a moving walkway at an airport, honestly. Like, it sounds exactly like a Vegas casino, no clocks, no windows. But autoplay isn't a slot machine lever that you have to actively pull.
No, not at all.
It is an environmental default. Once you are on the moving walkway, you have to actively pick up your luggage, overcome the physical momentum, and purposefully step off to start moving forward.
Yes.
If you do nothing, if you just stand there passively, the environment carries you to the next destination by default. Autoplay capitalizes on the friction of stopping.
And that friction is incredibly difficult to overcome because of the biological cost of the delivery mechanism.
Okay, unpack that.
Well, when you combine narrative cliffhangers, which stimulate a massive dopamine rush in the brain's reward pathway, with a frictionless autoplay feature, you are actively bypassing the prefrontal cortex.
It's a logic center.
Exactly. The dopamine loop essentially mutes the brain's executive function and impulse control. The rational voice that normally evaluates long-term consequences is ground out by the immediate biological need for narrative resolution. But is this actually a malicious dopamine loop or behavioral addiction? Or is technology just finally giving humans what they've always wanted, which is uninterrupted storytelling?
That's a really interesting way to frame it. But from the sources, it seems like the platform is functionally shutting down the part of the brain that says, hey, it is 2 a.m., you have a massive presentation tomorrow, turn off the television and go to sleep.
Yeah, that executive function is entirely offline.
And the physical toll of that bypass is staggering. I mean, it isn't just fatigue. Prolonged exposure to the blue light emitting from our screens severely disrupts the pineal gland's production of melatonin.
Right, which messes up everything.
The brain is tricked into thinking it is still daylight, which completely destroys the circadian rhythm. It leads to chronic insomnia, irritability.
And there's a remarkably candid quote from Netflix CEO Reed Hastings from a few years ago that strips away the illusion that this is just about providing good entertainment.
What did he say?
He stated, on the record, our biggest competitor is not entertainment platforms, it is sleep.
Our biggest competitor is sleep. That is a chilling admission. I mean, they aren't competing for market share against other media companies. They are openly competing against a fundamental human biological necessity for rest.
And they are spending billions of dollars in research and development to build the perfect prediction engines to win that biological war.
Billions.
But if we dig into the engineering reality, the pursuit of this algorithmic perfection is actually incredibly messy, and it often hits a wall of pure technological friction.
Which brings us to the legendary $1 million Netflix prize.
Oh, this is such a fascinating piece of tech history.
Reading through the tech blogs, this piece of history from like 2006 to 2009 is so interesting because it highlights the absolute limits of this architecture. They offered $1 million to any outside developer who could build an algorithm that beat their existing recommendation engine's accuracy by just 10%.
Just 10%.
And an elite team of developers actually achieved it. They hit the 10% threshold and won the $1 million. But the grand paradox of that entire saga is that Netflix never actually implemented the full winning algorithm into their platform.
No, they didn't.
They shelved $1 million piece of code, which makes absolutely no sense until you look at the computing power required to run it.
Right, because the engineering friction was insurmountable at the time. The winning entry wasn't just a simple formula. It was an incredibly complex ensemble, a blend of over 1,000 different predictive models working simultaneously.
So to scale that up to handle millions of users, especially during that specific historical window, when the company was pivoting away from mailing physical DVDs, which has very low latency requirements, to digital streaming, which requires massive real-time cloud compute.
Yeah, it was too much.
Running 1,000 blended models per user would have likely bankrupted their server capacity. The computational cost of running the code vastly outweighed the financial benefit of a 10% increase in predictive accuracy. It's like spending $1 million to engineer the world's most hyper-efficient sports car engine, only to put it on a shelf because your company just decided to start building airplanes instead.
That is exactly what happened.
Huh?
The $1 million prize ultimately served as a brilliant piece of marketing and an unparalleled recruitment tool to attract top engineering talent,
Right.
rather than a practical software update.
Right.
But if we connect this to the bigger picture, all of this engineering, the billions spent, the 20 million image requests a second, the pursuit of the perfect algorithm, it all trickles down to a very real social cost.
The human cost.
Yeah. This relentless, algorithmically driven push for engagement has created an entirely new form of social currency, particularly among the 18 to 34-year-old demographic.
The fear of missing out has been fully weaponized. Binge watching isn't just a solitary leisure activity anymore. It has become a strict social requirement.
Very true.
Like, if you haven't consumed the entirety of the latest trending series by Monday morning, you risk being completely isolated from cultural conversations. You are just locked out of the discourse.
But the deeper psychological issue highlighted in the research is the rise of what psychologists call parasocial relationships.
Okay, what does that mean exactly?
Well, as viewers spend hours upon hours locked in these dopamine loops, isolated in their customized digital wrappers, they begin substituting real-life relationships with virtual ones.
Oh, wow.
They feel like active participants in the lives of these fictional characters. The technology is so effective at keeping us engaged that we are trading the natural friction of real-world social fabrics for simulated, algorithmically smoothed connections.
And the research mentioned a phenomenon called post-series depression.
Yes, that's exactly it.
When a long-running show finally ends or a user finishes a binge, they can experience a profound, genuine sense of grief and emptiness. It is emotionally comparable to losing a close friend because the brain has been tricked into processing those digital interactions as genuine social bonds.
It's wild.
It is incredibly bleak when you realize we are sacrificing our sleep and our real-world relationships for a dopamine loop.
It is bleak.
But
And it is easy to assume that this hyper-engineered battle for our attention is confined entirely to our screens and digital devices.
right, because that's where the algorithms live.
It's exactly. But the physical world is adapting. Traditional brick-and-mortar industries are recognizing that our attention spans have been fried by these algorithms,
Yeah.
and they're deploying their own psychological hooks to fight the exact same war for our eyeballs in physical spaces.
And that is exactly what the Fast Company report on the breakfast cereal industry reveals.
That's a wild pivot.
I know. We have been deep in the digital weeds of cloud computing and contextual bandits, but the battleground is just as fierce in the mundane grocery store aisle. Because over the past 5 years, breakfast cereal sales have plummeted by more than 13%.
That's a huge drop.
We are talking about a massive drop in volume, from 2.47 billion units sold down to 2.14 billion units. And reading through the report, what shocked me was that this isn't primarily a nutritional shift, it is a visual problem.
It's all about the packaging.
Consumers demanded a shift toward natural food dyes and away from artificial colors. And as a result, the physical boxes and the cereal itself lost that bright, neon, artificial visual appeal. The colors became muted, the physical thumbnail of the real world basically stopped popping on the shelf.
The physical environment lost its visual hook.
Hmm.
So in the exact same way, a dull, unoptimized thumbnail on a streaming platform gets immediately scrolled past within that 90-second window, these muted cereal boxes are losing the attention war in the grocery aisle.
Right.
The visual noise of the modern world is too loud, and the muted boxes simply fade into the background.
So if you are a cereal executive and your product is literally fading into the background, how do you win back that critical window of attention from a kid or even an adult walking down the aisle? You can't use neon dyes anymore.
No, they won't let you.
So you revert to the oldest, most reliable dopamine hit in the physical marketing playbook: tactile engagement and physical rewards. You bring back the cereal box prize.
Yep. After largely abandoning them for years due to supply chain costs, safety concerns, and marketing backlash, massive brands are resurrecting the physical toy to short-circuit our attention.
It's brilliant in a way.
WK Kellogg Co., which, by the way, was recently acquired by the Italian conglomerate Ferrero for $3.1 billion, just brought back collectible plastic spoon figurines featuring characters from Toy Story 5.
And General Mills is partnering with the Jim Henson Company to alter the physical architecture of the box itself.
Yeah, that part is crazy.
They aren't just dropping a toy inside, they are releasing textured puppet version boxes of their classic monster cereals like Count Chocula and Frankenberry.
Wow.
The contrast here is just wild to me. So while Silicon Valley tech giants are deploying multi-armed bandit machine learning to generate 1 billion custom digital thumbnails a day to capture our attention, the titans of the cereal industry are fighting the exact same psychological war using collectible plastic spoons and textured cardboard.
It's a completely different medium, but the same goal.
Does this prove that when algorithms and visual stimulation reach a total saturation point, tactile nostalgia and physical touch are the only ways left to bypass our overloaded filters?
I think it proves that human psychology remains remarkably vulnerable to the same basic cognitive triggers, regardless of the sophistication of the technology. Whether the mechanism is a million-dollar prediction engine running thousands of blended models or a piece of textured cardboard that invites you to physically touch it, the foundational goal is identical:
Bypassing the rational brain.
to create an environment that bypasses rational choice and triggers an immediate emotional compulsion to engage.
So what does this all mean for us as consumers? We have covered a massive amount of ground today. We started with the Digital Chameleon bookstore. We looked at how AI dissects 86,400 frames of a single television episode to exploit our specific visual biases. We explored the Zeigarnik effect and how our brains are biologically hardwired to hate unfinished business. And we ended up in the grocery store aisle feeling the textured cardboard of a Count Chocula box. Everywhere we look, whether it's a completely reimagined Pulp Fiction thumbnail targeting John Travolta fans or an autoplay feature keeping us up until 3 a.m., our environment is being meticulously engineered to bypass our rational choice.
What it means is that understanding the architecture of these systems is the very first step to restoring your own agency.
Yes, taking back control.
We are not entirely helpless here. Once you are aware of that 90-second window, you understand the pressure the platform is under. Once you recognize that the desperate urge to watch the next episode isn't a genuine desire for storytelling, but rather a zygarnik mental itch engineered by a cliffhanger, you can actively reclaim your prefrontal cortex. You can recognize the autoplay feature for the airport moving walkway that it is.
Okay.
You have the power to pick up your luggage and step off. You can choose to hit pause. You can choose to protect your circadian rhythm and go to sleep. Awareness of the underlying engineering is how you stop being a passive victim of it.
Awareness is the ultimate defense against the attention economy. It allows us to see the strings attached to the puppets.
Exactly.
Okay.
But if we want to look at where those strings are heading next, there was one passing detail in the First Indie article that we have to address before we close.
Oh, right, the interactive stuff.
They briefly mentioned the incoming wave of what they called interactive binging. We have spent this entire deep dive discussing how AI is currently capable of manipulating our behavior just by changing the cover of the movie to keep us hooked.
Yeah.
But the technology is rapidly advancing toward a point where real-time generative AI won't just recommend content, it will actively shape the narrative.
That is a terrifying escalation.
Imagine the implications. What happens to our sense of reality when the algorithm detects your attention is waning and it instantly rewrites the script in real time?
Oh, wow.
It dynamically alters the actual plot, changes the dialogue, or introduces an explosion or a romance tailored precisely to your neurochemistry just to keep your pupils dilated for 5 more minutes.
Let's keep you in that loop.
Exactly. If we are all sitting on our couches watching a completely different story generated in real time for our specific psychological profile, the concept of a shared human culture doesn't just fragment. It ceases to exist entirely.
Yeah, the water cooler moment is officially dead at that point.
We wouldn't just be walking into a bookstore where the covers change. We would be opening the books to find that the ink on the page is literally rewriting itself to tell us exactly what we want to hear. And if the story always gives us exactly what our biology craves, we may never want to leave.
Definitely something to seriously mull over the next time you see that next episode in 5 seconds countdown appear on your screen. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us.